missing someone. Love with all your heart. Missing someone. Love with heart.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So this is a brand new client. She found me online and she wanted to gear towards a color that was a bit more flattering, that was less warm and just a bit ashier against her skin, and then as well as kind of like blend her grays. She has a bit of gray regrowth. So a little bit about her color history is her previous stylist was doing base color, and then they've done highlights before. You can see her highlights are about, I would say maybe like 3 months old, maybe 2 or 3 months old. But you can see her base color is really dark in between those highlights. And so her goal is to essentially be like an ashy brown tone. Now, when you have a client who has gray and they want to cover their gray, or their grays are bugging them, but they want to be kind of like an ash tone, I normally am not a huge fan of covering their grays with base color. And the reason is because, especially on a client who is naturally like a level maybe like 5 and below, if you're going to be depositing a base color, which is permanent hair color, onto the virgin hair to essentially cover the gray, at those levels, you're depositing warmth into the hair. And so when you go in and highlight it in the future, it's really hard for those highlights to really get past that level 7, which is where the orange lives, or even past like a level 6 where maybe some red and orange are living, because the lightener essentially now has to eat through the permanent color before it starts lightening up that virgin hair. So there's like a layer of permanent color, and then before it starts to kind of lighten up. So typically I always try to convince my clients to avoid base color at all costs if essentially their goal is to be something more neutral, something more ashy, just because it will be a lot less harsh on their hair when we go in and highlight it, and it'll be a lot easier to maintain, and the toner will also fade out a lot prettier too if it was toned on virgin hair versus if it was toned on hair that was potentially lifting out permanent color. And by the way, sorry that these clips are a little bit out of focus, but essentially what I'm doing is I am doing a detail hairline at the base where her hairline is in the back, and I did a weave, and then I took another weave right above it, and now I'm going in with my slicing pattern that I normally do on a lot of my clients, and I'm taking a center parting section and basically slicing this all the way towards the top of the head. And she doesn't want to be like super blonde, so I'm not gonna have these slices spaced too close together because that'll make her way too blonde. She does want to see like a good amount of dimension and just make it look really natural and blend with her gray. So we are going to be leaving, I would say, maybe like 3/4 of an inch in between in the back here, and then making sure that I'm fully saturating. And for these pieces, I like to custom cut my foils so that the lightener doesn't move around and we get a really clean, even lift. And then in another video of mine, I had someone ask me how I get the ends to kind of catch up to the root, especially when I'm using long foils. And because these foils are a little bit longer, what I'll do is I kind of pop these foils in the dryer, just like on the end. So I'll have them sit at the dryer. At my salon, we just have like standard hair dryers, and I just have them kind of sit, and then I just pop the ends of the foils into the dryer, if that makes sense, without having the dryer over the head. It's just the ends like resting into the dryer. But that's how I would make sure that the long foils kind of catch up, and I don't put the dryer on high heat. I just put it on like low to medium heat, and I'll put my hand in there to make sure it's not too hot or anything. But it's a good way to make sure that the ends kind of catch up to the root area, because the root area will conduct from heat from the body, and that will help process that part a little bit quicker. And then for my products, I am using the Blonde Me Sports Cuff Lightener. I did mix up a bowl of 6 volume and 20 volume to kind of dilute the 20 volume. And then after that first bowl, I will just be using 20 volume for the rest of the head. So I'm going to continue my slicing all the way up to about a little over an inch from the hairline. And once I get to that part, I normally will turn them around, and I like to do this in front of them because this is going to be essentially their money piece. So she wanted something that was going to be a little bit lighter in the front, but nothing too drastic. So right at the hairline, I am doing a very detailed weave, and then I'm going to be doing 2 slices back to back to kind of give her that like nice impact money piece. And then to blend her money piece with the slices in the back, I am going to take a slice but leave some negative space in between. But the key with this part is to leave a little bit of negative space compared, like less negative space compared to the back. So behind this foil, essentially, as I keep going and connecting, I will be leaving a little bit more hair in my negative space area as I keep slicing towards the back. So going back to what I was saying about the permanent color, so you can see by now we've been going through her roots and like foiling her, and she really doesn't have much gray in my opinion. I definitely think she has less than like maybe 20, maybe she probably has 25%, but for sure less than 50% gray. And if a client is naturally like a level 5 and 6 and below, and they have less than 50% gray, I will try to talk them out of doing base color, because I find that it just makes it a lot harder when you go in and highlight it, and then just layering toner after the highlights too. I feel like it just puts a lot of stress on the hair, opposed to if you were to just highlight virgin hair. So I always let my clients know that it's just not ideal if you essentially want to do highlights, but if you're someone who wants to stay dark and doesn't mind red tones, then you can do a base color. But if you're really someone who is gearing towards a color that is more neutral or even the slightest bit ashy, base color is just not super ideal when wanting to do highlights. And for this case, it's kind of like you just kind of have to personalize it by the client. I let them know what their options are, and I try to do the least first. So since this is her first time with me, we're not going to be doing base color in between her highlights, and I told her, let's feel it out after this first appointment, see how the regrowth is for you, and see if your grays were even really bugging you as it grew in. Another reason why I don't like to do base color on dark hair is because I feel like when you do a permanent base color against grays going in, it makes those grays a lot more noticeable. And I feel like if I were to just do blending like highlights instead of doing a base color in between, essentially when the grays go in, it will be the highlights against the grays, and I feel like that gives a lot more of a softer grow out than putting any type of base color or dark color in between to kind of hide it. Now, by now, you're probably thinking, like, I probably never do base color on any of my clients, but that's not true. I do have a few clients that will still do the base color, and I will still do it, but I always try to set up my clients to do the least amount of add-ons to their service, if that makes sense. Like, I try to make their appointment as simple as possible. Like, if you really don't need it, I try to avoid it. And I feel like if a client really doesn't need a base color and I feel like I can make them happy with just doing blending with highlights, then I try to shoot for that first. And I do have some clients where I have done this before, where like I'll do the highlights and they still come in, they're like, oh my god, my grays are still bugging me, the blending is not enough. Then of course I'm going to cover and maybe do like a tint in between. And sometimes what I like to do is I will spot treat a base color in those certain areas, especially if a client wants to like be in an ashy tone and have a tint in between their highlights. I do that on a few clients, and I will just personalize where I strategically place that color to kind of cover the patches of gray that they have to make them feel a little bit better as it grows out. But I always like to educate my clients and let them know what essentially it will be doing to their hair and the stress that it puts their hair on when we go back in and highlight it out, so that they know and they're fully aware of what I'm doing and every step and the reason why I choose to do it this way. Because I consider myself a really honest stylist. I feel like I never try to like upsell anything to my clients. Like if they don't need it, I tell them they don't need it. And I never try to talk them into anything extra if they really don't need it. And so I feel like it builds this really good like trust relationship between my clients and I, because they always ask me for my opinion, you know, like, Lauren, do you think I need a haircut, or you think I need a treatment? And I will always be honest. Like, if you really can get away with it, I'll let them know, like, okay, yeah, you know, you can get away with it this time, but you'll need it next time. And I feel like that just is a good trait to have as a stylist, because I feel like if I were to go to a professional and didn't really know much about the trade and stuff like that, or the art behind it, and I felt like my hairdresser was being honest to me, I would be more inclined to just go with their opinion and always ask what they think is best. Okay, so anyways, I finished up my foiling technique that I do on pretty much all of my clients, but one thing I wanted to show you that I did a little different on her is right now you can see Emily is actually going in and putting some cotton in between the foils. That is to prevent any like slippage from the foils and bleeding onto any of the roots or anything like that. And then I am going in, and only in the front areas I am weaving and teasing. So you can see I'm doing a weave, and then I'm going in and doing a soft tease. I tease from the bottom all the way and then go to the mid and catch that rest of the tease. And this is going to soften the ends. And I wanted to tip out her ends so that she could have kind of like that ombre lived in look where the roots are darker and the ends get a little bit lighter. And I feel like it makes a huge difference even just by popping in a few tip outs in the front. Okay, so considering her color history, I knew her hair wasn't going to get like super light. And then I also knew that some of it was going to be a little uneven because, again, she has some base color, she had a little bit of regrowth that was virgin, and then she had some old highlights and then some old base color in between those old highlights. So we were working with a lot, and I would say generally her hair lifted to like a good level, like 7-8, let's say. And so I'm rinsing out the back, and you can see it looks pretty good. A good indication of when to rinse whenever this happens, like you have different levels in the hair, is to just catch the hair when it reaches like a level 9, I would say, and then just wash it out. I wouldn't let anything get to a level 10 really, because there's no point, since you're gonna have to drop the level down anyways when you tone. So for the toner, I did a mixture of 2 different colors for the mids and ends to kind of help tone out a lot of that warmth. But I did do a shadow root, so I am using a liquid demi-line. And for her shadow root, I am using a level 6 natural. The level 6 natural that I'm using is a little bit more ashier than the normal level 6 natural, I would say, in most color lines. And I started applying that in the back, and I like to apply the shadow roots vertically. I just feel like it blends a little better opposed to if I were to paint it on horizontally. I feel like horizontally you can kind of see the lines a little bit, but whenever I do it vertically, it's a little bit more diffused when you're doing like such a fast, quick shadow root like I'm doing right now. And I am going to be doing the front, just like hitting the front with the shadow root just like a baby, but doing a longer shadow root behind the front money piece. So after the shadow root, I'm going to be applying my lighter toner. So for my lighter toner, I am mixing up a 8-2, which is a level 8 violet. And I would say 3/4 of my formulation is going to be 8-2. And then 1/4 of this formulation, I am going to add in a 6-1, which is a level 6 ash. And so the reason why I like to do 3/4, 8-2 to 1/4, 6-1 is because I first need the 8-2 to help balance the hair. If I were to just put 6-1 on this, which is a level 6 ash, it's more blue based, it might make some areas a little green because the ash might be a little too blue for her hair. So that's why I only like to put in 1/4 of the formula of the 6-1. And then majority of the formula will be 8-2 to kind of help cancel out that yellow before it's able to turn green, if that makes sense. And I find that I have made this similar formulation in a few different liquid demi lines, and regardless of the line, it always works for me. So it's just kind of my go-to that I've essentially created, because it creates this really pretty like level 7, but is able to tone out the warm tones from the hair lifting from a level 7 ranging all the way to a level 9. Alrighty guys, so here is the finished look. We absolutely loved it. I probably left her toner on for maybe like 10 minutes after I finished applying, but you can see her root is diffused. We did not do a base color. It blended really pretty, and you can see that the toner was able to really tone out a lot of the warmth in her hair. Now, although her hair didn't lift perfectly, the way that this is going to fade is some areas are going to fade a little bit more yellow than others, and she'll definitely need a toner, I would say, in about like 8 to 10 weeks. But it will lighten up, get majority more yellow, and then as she comes in for touch-ups, I believe she could probably wait 12 weeks if her roots don't bug her too much. But for her touch-ups, what I would do is I would probably try to pick out a little bit more of her old color that I left out from the foils this time, and then try to kind of get rid of that warmth from her old base color and her old highlights to essentially get her hair looking a little bit more ashy and a little bit more even and lighter. But that's a little bit more down the line and kind of our goal. But we were really happy with the result after today and everything, and she definitely felt a lot ashier than she normally does. Another thing I wanted to mention is because since her hair didn't really lift to a level 9 and 10, I wouldn't recommend this client to use purple shampoo at all. I would just recommend them to use a color safe shampoo. I really like the Amika, like the Cure or the Normcore for this type of color. But yeah, purple shampoo just probably wouldn't do much other than just dry out the hair. But that's just my opinion as far as aftercare. Alrighty guys, that is it for this week's episode. Thank you guys so much for watching and tuning in. And as always, I will talk to you guys next week.